He came to the wedding alone, and everyone noticed, not because solitude is loud, but because silence has a way of echoing in rooms filled with celebration. The wedding hall glowed with warm lights and polished marble floors that reflected chandeliers like scattered stars, laughter bouncing off walls dressed in white and gold, yet he moved through it like a shadow that had lost its owner. His name was Ariv, and as he stepped inside, holding nothing but an envelope with a neatly folded gift card, the memories hit him harder than the music. Just 3 years ago, this same hall, or one painfully similar, had been where he and the bride-to-be had once stood together at a cousin's engagement, whispering promises that felt eternal at the time. Now he stood alone, adjusting a suit he had bought years earlier for interviews that never quite changed his life, eyes scanning the room but never daring to rest on her face. He knew where she would be. He knew how she would look. He had replayed that image 1,000 times in his mind, and each time it hurt just a little more, so he decided before entering that he would not look at the bride. Not once. He told himself this wedding was not about him, that pain does not give you ownership over someone else's happiness, yet the heart rarely listens to logic when it is still bleeding. People whispered as he walked past them. Some recognized him immediately, others sensed the weight he carried without knowing his story. "Isn't that the guy who used to live next door?" someone murmured. "Didn't he?" and the bride, another voice trailed off, swallowed by the sound of clinking glasses. Ariv took his seat at the far end, a place chosen deliberately so he could leave without being seen if it became too much. He placed the envelope on the table, folded his hands, and stared at the centerpiece, a ring of white roses floating in glass, telling himself to breathe. Around him, families reunited, old friends laughed loudly, and the groom's side celebrated with the confidence of people who had won something. Ariv felt like a spectator at a match he had once trained for, knowing every move, every strategy, but no longer allowed on the field. As the ceremony began, the hall fell into a respectful hush. The doors at the back opened, and the bride walked in. Ariv's chest tightened. He kept his eyes fixed on the floor, just as he had promised himself. He watched only the hem of her dress as it glided forward, white fabric brushing the carpet like waves kissing the shore. He remembered that walk, how once she had joked about tripping on purpose just to make him laugh, how she had said if she ever walked toward anyone like that, she hoped it would be him. He swallowed hard, forcing those memories back into the place where he stored all the things he could not afford to feel anymore. The vows echoed through the hall, words about forever and commitment, and Ariv felt each sentence like a quiet accusation. He was not angry at her. He was angry at time, at circumstances, at the version of himself that had not been enough when it mattered. When the applause came, he joined in softly, clapping just enough to appear polite. He told himself that he was strong for being here, that showing up meant he had grown. Yet strength, he realized, is not the absence of pain, it is the decision to walk with it without letting it define your steps. As people rose for photos, Ariv remained seated, hoping to blend into the background. That was when he noticed the neighbor, the man sitting 2 rows ahead, slightly to the left. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him as Mr. Rajan, though he was barely in his early 40s, a man with calm eyes and a posture that suggested quiet confidence. He had moved in next door after Ariv's father passed away, during a time when grief had hollowed the house and Ariv himself felt like a guest in his own life. Rajan had been polite, never intrusive, always greeting him with a nod or a simple, "good evening," yet there had been something about him that felt steady, like an anchor you didn't realize you needed until the storm arrived. Rajan stood up slowly, smoothing his jacket, and for a moment, no one paid attention. Weddings are full of movement, and a man standing is rarely news. But then he cleared his throat, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to cut through the chatter, and said, in a voice that carried authority without aggression, "Before we continue, I need everyone to pause for a moment." The hall quieted, surprised by the interruption. Ariv's heart skipped. He knew that voice. He had heard it late at night over the fence, offering advice he never asked for but always needed. Rajan turned slightly, not toward the bride, but toward Ariv. His eyes met Ariv's, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them. Understanding. Resolve. Protection. "Don't look at the bride," Rajan said calmly, his words slicing through the air with unexpected force. A ripple of confusion moved through the guests. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. Rajan continued, his gaze never leaving Arav. "Look at me." Arav froze. Every instinct told him to disappear, to sink into the chair and let the moment pass, but there was something in Rajan's tone that commanded attention. Slowly, almost against his will, Arav lifted his eyes. Rajan nodded once, as if to say, "This is exactly where you need to be right now." Rajan turned back to the crowd. "Some stories don't end the way we plan," he said, his voice steady but layered with emotion. "Some people come to weddings not to celebrate what they gained, but to honor what they lost, and that takes more courage than anyone here realizes." A murmur swept the room. The bride's smile faltered slightly, though she remained composed. The groom looked confused, unsure whether to intervene. Rajan raised a hand gently. "I won't take much of your time," he said. "But I will take this moment, because moments like these decide what kind of people we are." Ariv's heart pounded so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. His mind screamed at Rajan to stop, to let him fade into anonymity, yet another part of him, the part that had been quiet for too long, felt seen in a way that terrified and comforted him at the same time. Rajan spoke again, and this time his words felt like they were directed not just at the room, but at Ariv's wounded soul. "There is a man here," Rajan said, "who loved deeply, gave honestly, and lost quietly. He did not come here to be pitied. He came to be respectful. And that," Rajan paused, letting the silence do its work, "is dignity." Ariv felt his eyes burn. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to stand up and leave, to escape before the tears betrayed him. He had spent years learning how to look fine on the outside while breaking on the inside, and now, in front of everyone, that armor was cracking. Rajan took a step closer, closing the distance just enough so Ariv could hear him clearly. "You don't owe anyone an explanation," Rajan said softly. "But you owe yourself the truth." Then, louder, so the room could hear again, "We celebrate love today, yes. But let us also respect the people who taught us what love costs." The hall was silent now, not awkward silence, but the kind that feels heavy with meaning. Even the musicians had stopped playing. The bride looked down briefly, her expression unreadable. Ariv felt exposed, yet strangely lighter, as if a weight he had carried alone had finally been acknowledged. Rajan straightened, his job done, and returned to his seat without another word. The ceremony resumed slowly, cautiously, as though everyone was afraid to disturb something fragile that had just been revealed. Ariv sat there, staring ahead, his chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. He did not know whether to feel grateful or embarrassed, but one thing was clear, something inside him had shifted. For the first time since he walked in, he did not feel invisible. He felt human. And as the music started again and the guests tried to reclaim their celebration, Ariv realized that this was not the end of his story, it was the moment the story finally decided to speak. The hall never truly returned to what it had been before Rajan stood up. Music played again, glasses clinked, laughter attempted to reclaim its place, but something invisible had shifted, like a crack beneath polished marble that no amount of decoration could hide. Ariv felt it in the way people glanced at him now, no longer curious, no longer whispering, but cautious, respectful, as if they had just realized that quiet people often carry the loudest stories. He remained seated for a while, letting the noise wash over him, his heart still racing from what had happened. His first instinct was to leave. He could slip out quietly, disappear into the night, and preserve whatever dignity he had left. But Rajan's words echoed inside him, "You owe yourself the truth." For years, Ariv had avoided that truth, burying it under routine and responsibility, convincing himself that survival was the same as living. Tonight, for the first time, he wondered if maybe staying was not weakness, but courage.